Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvadam. Om Ganganapatiye Namaha. Greetings and welcome to this edition of Thursday Morning Live. I will start by saying that we live in a world that is modulated by time, space, and causation. And I personally am very interested in this because this year will be the 30th year since I met Mr. Pilskog. After I published Aghori, I got a letter from him. This, young people, was back in the day before email. This was when you actually had to put stamps on letters and put them into the post box, and then by some method that is still kind of obscure, they would get to the place where you wanted them to go. So he sent me a letter, and he said he would be interested if we could meet. And I was going to Seattle anyway to lecture about Ayurveda, and so I started, when I was there next, I met him and we became friendly, and I started staying with him whenever I was in Seattle, which was 2 or 3 times a year, which I did for the ensuing 22 years until he and his wife moved down here. And now we still see one another twice a year, but for longer periods since we are in a larger space and with longer time. So it was a great pleasure to be able to experiment with doing an event like this where he would be doing part of it and I would be doing part of it. And as you may have seen, he has his own way of doing things and I have my own way of doing things. And so far, generally speaking, they have complemented one another. So hopefully they will continue to complement one another. Because fundamentally and basically, our approach to things is similar in that it is a desirable thing to be able to perceive reality as clearly as possible, and the reality that we see with the help of our sense organs, of course, is the only reality that we can, that we as organisms can practically experience, because we as organisms employ those sense organs to provide for us an image of the world. So when people talk about MΑYЯ, my mentor used to say that MAYЯ was the skin of the world. And it's the skin of the world because it's the impression that's provided to us that allows us to have an image of what's going on outside. It is not what's going on outside because it's been selected by the sense organs and it's been calculated and it has been presented to the internal awareness on the basis of calculations that are happening in the conscious mind and the subconscious mind and also the unconscious mind. And all of these together provides us our darshana. Darshana meaning both literally in Sanskrit vision and also our philosophy, our way of seeing the world, our filter that allows us to extract the things that appear to be meaningful and ignore things that appear at that moment to be less meaningful. And the more clearly that one can see reality and understand what's going on behind the skin of the mango, behind the skin of the world, and the more accurately one can see behind the vast pervasion of all the different manifestations of different varieties of reality, to the fact that there is a behind all of that kind of reality that is not limited by time, space, or causation. That is regarded by many people, including me, to be a desirable thing. People talk about Tantra or Tantra, and I personally, I'm very interested in the way that words get derived as a Sanskrit. The Sanskrit grammar is based on roots and words that emerge from those roots. And the word Tantra emerged from the root Tana, which means to extend. It can mean also to weave. A word that comes from that same root is Tanu, which means the body. So something that's extended, something that's been woven together, is the Tanu. And Tantra is a process of weaving. It is a process of taking threads, and those would be threads of Shakti in whatever kind of form that you decide you want to employ that Shakti, and to weave them together to create an effect of some kind. It would be an understatement to say that Tantra is generally misunderstood. Here in the West, people equate it with good sex yoga. In India, most people don't even think about that. When they hear the word Tantra, they think of black magic. Because, in the same way that over here, people who think they're studying and practicing Tantra often get off into good sex yoga, in India, you may start practicing Tantra in a positive way, but you might find yourself tempted by the things that you can procure by employing it in a less desirable way, in a way that sometimes actually either simulates or actually becomes black magic. The very idea of Tantra being magic is, magic is, if we define magic, I think or one definition that I like for that is the production of effects by means other than the obvious. So you're still employing usually some kind of technique for this purpose, except in very unusual, spontaneous cases. And that technique may be one that is it's providing cause, and the effects that you procure from that technique may not be something that, according to your common sense, would be things that would emerge, but may emerge anyway. Many people who define Tantra, and really there is no one definition of it, because Tantra is not a philosophy so much as a practical way of figuring out how to do things and doing them. Finding results that you want to achieve, achieving those results, and moving ahead. One definition of Tantra, and it was one that my mentor would use frequently, though not exclusively, was that Tantra was all about Bhuta Shuddhi. Shuddhi means purification, and Bhuta, in this case, particularly means the Mahabhutas, the 5 elements that the Sankhya philosophy talks about from which the manifested universe is created: earth, water, fire, air, and space. But Bhuta literally means anything that has been created. So anything that you've created in yourself, anything that has been created externally, everything that's part of the already created creation, to purify that so it's not interfering with your perception of what's going on. Not interfering with your ability to connect to that reality that is not limited by time, space, and causation, that reality that's not limited by color and form and all of the other things that that we can perceive with our sense organs, and simply by the effect of perceiving, that perception itself has a tendency to make us believe that those things are real. It's only practical because you have sense organs, because you have to find things to eat, you have to avoid becoming dinner for something else. You have sense organs because you want to obtain cues about the world for important things that relate to you protecting yourself. But the very fact that the sense organs are not only pointed externally to pay attention to the environment, but they are charged to react quickly against what's going on in the environment, to provide you to get the opportunity to get the food before anybody else does, or to run faster in front of the tiger, faster than whoever is behind you, so that you'll be less likely to be consumed. That factor in the interaction between the senses and their objects, that factor that causes you to have great confidence in the veracity of your senses, that's one of those things that makes it difficult for you to be able to have confidence in your intuition, to have confidence in a reality of awareness that is not predicated on your senses, because so repeatedly over so many hundreds of millions of years, the senses have proved useful for protecting you against the things that you needed to be protected from, and for providing you the things that you needed to be provided with. So everything that is being perceived by the senses, at least in an ordinary human being, is something that's already been created. Most of the things have been created out of the 5 Mahabhutas, the 5 great elements, but a lot of it has been created out of your mind also. Perceptions that you've had that have been worked on by your awareness, and memories that you have, and memes that may have lodged themselves in your mind, and possibly things that other ethereal beings, which can, in Sanskrit, generally be referred to as bhuta as well. Everything that was alive and is now not alive. Everything, even if it was never alive, but that was created, that can interact with you in some way. All of these things are bhutas. But the most important 5 bhutas that we have that we want to purify for the purpose of being able to perceive things accurately are the 5 Mahabhutas from which the world is created, because they are the 5 things that our sense organs are trying to connect to when they are trying to connect to things. The earth element relates, of course, to everything that is solid under normal conditions, and solid things are stable. So the earth element is very valuable. That's why we're sitting on earth element, because it's stable. But it's also not so valuable because it is too stable. Where there's stability, there's tamas. You know the word tamas. You're familiar with that word. So it is also the case that if you've studied Sankhya, you know that the sense organs, relatively speaking, compared to everything else in the environment, your sense organs are chiefly associated with sattva. And the 5 Mahabhutas are created out of tamas, in fact. So when your sense organs connect to something that's made out of the 5 Mahabhutas, including this bottle of water, for example, when your 6 sense organs connect with this, they are connecting with something that's created out of the 5 Mahabhutas, so that's tamas right there. And you're connecting with something that you are relating to as a thing. You are relating to as an object. You're projecting your awareness onto it as an object, and that is magnifying the tamas in the thing. Because you as sattva, you are saying, I am the subject, and that is the object. So you are separating things. Subject means I'm taking the sattva onto myself, and tamas means I'm pushing the object, means I'm pushing the objectivity, the separateness from me. The non-sattva is all going over here. Rajas is just moving things back and forth. So simply by virtue of perceiving this, not only are you perceiving this and you are taking in tamas into your awareness because it is a thing, but also because you are perceiving it as a thing. If you were able to perceive it as simply, this is one more sensory perception, that I'm not going to allow myself to do anything other than perceive it to the degree in which I need to perceive it, then it would have less of an effect of bringing tamas into your awareness. The fact is, however, that the more you use your sense organs, the more you are inviting tamas into your awareness, the more that you are encouraging tamas to be present. And this is why in one of the Ayurvedic texts, it says very clearly that once your mind has become tired of going outside of itself and picking up sensory impressions, then it stops doing that and it starts to project internally, and that's when you go to sleep. The reason why you're going to sleep, I mean, yes, it's partly because the mind is tired, but it's also because you've accumulated, and sleep is very much associated with tamas, because there you are lying down inert, may as well be dead. Sleep is associated with tamas, and the fact is that when you've accumulated, when you brought in all of this extra tamas from the outside all day long, there comes a point where you have so much tamas that the sattva can't function anymore because it is drowning in a sea of tamas. And then you have to go to sleep so all the tamas can get digested and dissipated and so on. And then you can wake up again and start the whole process all over. And years go by, and then you die. Unless you have elected to try to find out what is going on in the system and look behind the curtain and see the man behind the curtain and notice that in fact he is not the great and powerful Oz, but it is simply part of this mechanism that's been generated by nature over a period of hundreds of millions of years for the purpose of attempting to come up with ways to reflect reality in a much more effective fashion. So, in order to be able to do that, the better we are able to use the sense organs, but to use them in a way that is not the sense organ consuming us, it's we employing the sense organ. It is suggested that purifying the elements is a good idea. So we want to purify the stability of the earth element in such a way that it will still be stable for us, but that we're not taking in so much tamas that it is causing a disturbance to our own internal awareness. So what we're trying to do really is find a way to be able to possess the earth. Why are we employing the earth element? Why are we so happy about there being earth element here? Because we need stability. The more that you can awaken the earth element inside yourself and find stability inside yourself, the less you need the earth element externally. Practically speaking, it's always going to be more convenient to actually sit on something stable. Sitting on water, less, on your waterbed, less enjoy. Sitting on the compressed air being the not so stable, and definitely sitting on fire, we don't suggest that. And we're not even going to talk about sitting on space because there's no on to sit on in space. Space is everywhere. So the only practical thing you can sit on is the earth element, and you want to have the earth element available to you. If you and the earth element get into a good relationship, you will find that the earth element is always assisting you to do what it needs to do for you. So even if you are in a rocky area, you will find some sort of nice place where you can plop yourself down and feel stable for the length of time that you need to be there. With the intention, eventually, that there will be enough of a good relationship between you and the earth element that you might not even require the earth element anymore. Perhaps you would be able to maintain your sang-froid even by levitating above the ground. That might not be something that you have an ambition for. It might not be something that you will achieve in the space of one lifetime. But it's